Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Myth Rights. Today we have Lara, otherwise known as Bad DPS, with us. Lara, why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and just tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, hey, I'm Lara. I'm BA Honours, University of Lincoln, specialising in design, but I'm also an avid gamer as well. And in my spare time, I do a bit of arty-farty stuff.
Awesome. So, from what I understand, you began your creative career as a scriptwriter. Is that kind of what? Do I have the right idea there?
Yeah, to quote Mum, if I can say this, I'm massively overqualified.
Fair enough.
But I actually started doing sciences. I took media studies because A level wise, I couldn't get the A levels I wanted to line up, so I ended up doing media studies, which worked out in its favour because I realised that sciences at A level, it's a bit of a difficulty jump.
It was not for you. You wouldn't be
It
the
it
first.
it's ridiculous. They actually told me if I can't math, don't even bother doing physics. Just don't bother. Anyway, the media studies led to me going to two universities for 2 degrees. So, as I said, massively overqualified. I did an FDA in film and moving image at Leeds Met. They're now called Leeds Poly. It's part of the old Polytechnic in Leeds for our older listeners. Specifically, Electric Press, which is the Northern Film School. FDA, if you don't know, is a foundation degree in art. There's very few of them left because the government don't really like them because
Fair
they're
enough.
classed as a bit easy. So I did that for a year. After you do one of those for a year, if you can find one, you get a certificate in the area. So I got a certificate in film and moving image, which is worth a lot of points for your next university. So then I
Nice.
transferred to Lincoln, but I went straight into first year because otherwise I would have been specialising straight away on my discipline, and I didn't really want to do that. So that's why I did the year at Leeds first, so I can got a feel of what I wanted to do, and then I could go straight over to Lincoln, and I'd have to do this, but I'd have to do the disciplines again, but kind of more from a theoretical point.
Right.
Uh, Script writing I took in first year. It was one of my highest marks, but for some stupid reason I thought, you know what, you've got arty types in your family. Why don't you do design?
Well, you got to try everything out once, right? I mean, that's the point of going to school is finding out what you like and what you're good at. So it's really not a terrible idea. I mean, to go into try something that you like. Pretty much every creative I have ever interviewed says, oh, I went to school for business. That's usually the very first one. Or I went to school as a lawyer or a doctor, and I was just like, I was smart enough to hack it, or I wasn't smart enough to hack it. And either way, I just kind of decided I didn't want to spend my life doing that. That wasn't for me. I mean, to me, that's
Yeah.
probably the most important thing that creatives get out of school is knowing what we can't spend the rest of our lives doing and what we can. So you would not be the first that said such things to me. Now,
Yeah.
I know that you have multiple degrees here, but I know that you had a thesis in, I don't know which particular class. You'll have to clue me in here.
The thesis, as they do them in the UK, I'm not sure what it is like stateside. You can write about anything. I went down because I'm dyslexic, dyscalculic myself. My language is supposed to be that of somebody 2 years older than me, but coordination.
Not so much.
I don't know. I still know my left from my light. Sorry, that was terrible. I'll shut up.
No, no, that was beautiful.
um, but yeah, I decided to look at ableism and representation of disabilities in gaming, and at the time, I was still playing a lot of Warcraft. This was when was this? Would be in about Warlords time.
Okay.
So I had a look at. I wrote a paper on invisible and visible disabilities among characters in that game. And what I found was a lot of invisible representation if you knew what you're looking for, but not really anything on the player front, which was a bit of a shame. But to be honest, the time that I wrote this, that's kind of expected. But honestly, if I was to write that thesis again, I would probably pick a different game or a different franchise, because every time I look at games and film now, I've found since which I'm literally going, that's an invisible disability. That's another one. That could be another one.
Yeah, I think that that's probably safe to say. You know, that once you get woke to something, it gets really hard to go back and view it the same way. It changes it irrevocably. I always find myself evaluating media around me differently, especially since I took my career studies program at Siena Heights. One of the things that I have a very hard time doing now is watching movies. Obviously, certain game companies, the way that they are run and the way they represent things actually disgust me to the point where I can't play the game and I
Yeah.
just avoid it altogether. And I've had to, find new
There's
game
some,
homes.
there are
Yeah.
some that you can just look at and think, can you actually do that? Like, is that legal
Yeah,
to
like
represent that?
it's to say it's so badly done, then you're just kind of like, I think that that's a lawsuit waiting to happen. So next, I don't feel like participating. Life is a pile of farcical bullshit. I refuse to participate. Um, but yeah, like, or even books. I was talking to another interviewer earlier this week, and I was discussing that I used to find my Harry Potter books were like my comfort book. They're actually a little older for me as far as like my, I wasn't in my teenage years like a lot of people were when they were introduced, or elementary school. I was at college level, but I always found those books really comforting. And now every time I read them, there are places where I just read lines and I just cringe, like I physically flinch, and I'm like, oh my god, oh no, and I have to put the book down. And I'm just like, I can't do this,
No.
I can't do it anymore. So yeah, definitely, I feel that. So, what projects are you working on right now?
Oh, creatively or just in general? Because I've been screaming at the four walls since lockdown began.
Yeah, I know
Because
we're all
I'm in
kind of like
the
chewing
UK,
our
they
own
can't.
limbs.
Well, after exhausting however many sourdough starter attempts
And getting banned on
once.
Facebook for posting pictures of them. Yes, they were round
Oh,
and
well,
soft and beautiful, and so of course those were
well, at least
clearly.
they haven't discovered my pasta dough balls yet, fortunately. But I think no, I think that I fear for their safety.
Some bot
No.
somewhere those are testicles. No bot, they're not. It's really
Why
it's
are they
pasta
green?
dough. That is definitely call a
But
physician if they're green. By the way, that's a
I
bad
kind of
sign.
went back into like the design aspect. I Before lockdown, I bought a book about teach myself. Well, I've used it to teach myself basic graffiti word art.
Okay, that's really
So
cool.
I used to draw quite a lot of that when I was on my lunch break. So I was working in town. So I'd just like take a couple of scrapbooks with me, because I'm a creature of habit. I will always hang around in coffee shops with a sketchbook. So I would just sketch on my break, or there's a little time I had before my shift started. But then I stopped doing that, and it's like when lockdown came on, I started picking slots during the week to do that at home. So I did a lot of that, but it's kind of trailed off a bit because it's 2020. Things happened in 2020.
It's been a year. It's been a dumpster fire of a year.
That aside, I have been messing around with a bit of prop making at the moment. I seem to have acquired a large collection of Nerf guns that are getting paint jobs on them.
Well, you know
Rip
what?
my bank balance.
Pretty much, as I say, cosplay the real love. So, obviously, cosplay is kind of coming in there as something that you're doing as a creative
Oh yeah, and
outlet.
funnily enough, it's the year that I was set. I was set to do Asylum, which is I think it's the largest one in the world. It's one of the big ones in the world. Steampunk convention, which they have
Nice.
every year here. I was all set, and then they cancelled it because of the
COVIDs.
COVIDs.
Uh,
So I'm just sat here with various coats, various booties, and various Nerf guns, and nothing to do with them because we, the country, are too badly behaved.
Back into lockdown. Not again. I'll be good, Daddy. Back into lockdown. Um, so obviously you've noticed probably with increasing free time and increasing mental health needs that creativity is probably pretty important in your life.
Yeah.
Do you have any plans to just keep, because obviously this is going to keep rolling on for a while, to keep integrating that creativity into your life? Or, like, do you have any legacy goals, like you want to write a novel, or you want to write a script for a movie, or things like that?
I'm gonna say no. I'm quite content just to I burn out pretty quickly when I draw. The only
That's
reason I'm not doing props at the moment is because I'm in the UK and we have literally no sunlight at the moment. Thanks, weather.
seasonal affective. It's such a good
So
time.
that's going to be on hold until at least we find whether the sun has yeeted itself off to.
Fair enough. Sometimes you
Welcome to
just
the
gotta
Twilight Zone.
you gotta scrape the energy up to live, and that's what you got.
But art-wise, I need to get back into the swing with that because I found that when I was drawing, the way I had a timetable, I'm dyscalculic, so that technically means I have a bit of ADHD as well,
Right.
and possibly going on an OCD. I
Mm-hmm.
would literally plan out days to draw on, based off my Spotify. So I'll be like looking at my daily mix. It's like, right, I'm drawing on that day. I'm drawing on that day. I'm not drawing on that day because that playlist I don't like. But when I
So,
was doing that, I found it was really good practice. But then when I kind of dropped off that, it's like just the motivation decided to go on holiday as well.
so you're probably a creative that you really need the boost from the environment around you. That's
Yeah,
one of the
and unhealthy amounts of coffee.
fair enough. We all need our addictions. Uh, So, since kind of having your eyes opened to the way that creativity, and by creativity I mean like game industry, I mean movie industry, film writing, script writing, since you kind of learned to see the ableism in gaming um, and arts, how do you feel about the inclusivity in your own life and works? Do you find yourself doing things differently, or thinking about things differently, or being inspired differently? Obviously, you have your own minor disabilities in your life. How has
Mm.
that affected things?
Well, in regard,
Oh, I know, right?
yeah, I would say in regards to inspiration from say like own experiences, I have taken to. It's kind of to force myself back into drawing.
Mm-hmm.
I've started because I've started trying to wrangle my bad habits of sleeping. Because if you give me half a chance, I will sleep for 12 hours.
I miss
But
those
I have a
days.
very, I can sometimes have very, very messed up dreams, and I've started taking notes, and I've sometimes drawn some of those.
That's kind of cool.
As I posted one a while back on Twitter because I have a recurring little dream where about rats. I don't have a hatred of rats myself or a phobia of rats, but I had it. The dream, not the rats. That sounds like something you need to see the GP about.
Yes.
But last time I had that dream, I literally forced myself out of bed and then drew one of my word arts
Nice.
from it, and it was a good little therapy exercise as well.
Yeah, I mean,
I mean, I've got a
absolutely.
few of them. I don't tweet all of them because sometimes they're a little bit personal.
Right.
So I don't really want to splatter the whole chaos that is my family situation all over the internet at the moment.
Well, it sounds like you're pretty inspired by your own life experience, so maybe that's, you can take even some of that negative energy and turn it into something positive in your artwork in the future.
Yeah.
And listening to you talk about your rat dream, I think, and I believe, don't quote me on this, it was Salvador Dali, who used to have such incredible hypnagogic hallucinations that he would sleep on the edge of the bed and hold a spoon in his hand, a really big metal spoon, and when he would just start to fall asleep and he would have those hallucinations right before he fell asleep, his hand would go limp and he'd drop the spoon on the floor and it would wake him up, and then he would get up and paint because he would paint what he remembered seeing from his hallucinations. That's what it reminds me of.
You know, if I do that, Steve, my other half, just come in and just say, what are you doing?
What is wrong with you? I mean, like, I started taking notes, and, like, when I would have really great dreams, and I'd sit up and be like, that's incredible plot. And, I started putting a piece of paper next to the bed to write my ideas down. And I woke up in the morning and found uninspired things like peanut butter sandwich. Me. What does that have to do with anything? Peanut butter sandwich. What in the hell was I talking about? So for me, that didn't work just because, like, I do get inspired by some of the dreams that I have, but it turns out to be not so feasible once I'm awake. I mean, for a humorous piece, certainly, but not for fantasy or sci-fi. I was hoping to take advantage of that, but I think I'm not really awake enough to do the thing.
There was a brilliant exercise that my script writing tutor at Leeds would have us do. The first thing we did, first class of the semester, we all had to buy a notebook. And we had to carry that round with us while we did the module. And if we overheard anything we thought had script potential, we were to write it down. And some of those, we all had at least one thing that we'd overheard for that module, but some of those went forward into the end of year films.
You'd be surprised. Yeah.
The end of year film which I worked on, I think it's still on YouTube. This is kind of embarrassing. I seem to have forgotten the name of it. But that will have been initially from part of this exercise of just walking around with a notebook and observing.
It's a really great way to go about it. Absolutely, keeping a journal, keeping, just a little notebook, a cheap notebook that you don't feel bad writing in, just write down random stuff that inspired you, things you heard throughout the day. I always jot chunks of poetry. I have no idea why. Like, I'll get a line or a verse in my head and I have to jot it down. And, yeah, I mean, as most of my actual published works that aren't self-published are majority poetry. So that was one way to kind of get some inspiration, get that jumping off point. Now I'm kind of looking at some stuff here, and it seems that you've got some advisory experience as a game dev. That's actually kind of cool, like a pseudo game
Yeah,
dev.
this was completely on a whim, actually. I ended up with a bit of an advisory role for a anti-grav racer called Formula Fusion, but people are probably more likely to know it as Pacer. That is the latest name that they are running with. My advisory on that was it in regards to what you see today, the initiate system with the white ships in that, and some of the changes to the campaign with the idea of team scouts and the shiny skins for the teams. That was me.
Nice.
But that came from initially because they wanted feedback from the community because they were preparing to do a massive reshuffle of everything because it wasn't perfect. It was one of those situations where you have a dev that recognizes, like, this isn't perfect. We need to get our heads down. We need to fix it. I mean, to be honest, slightly off topic, but the best example of a dev doing that is Hello Games and No Man's Sky. They
Right.
knew something went wrong. They knew there was a problem. They got their heads down and they worked their butts off to fix it. So it was kind of like, it's kind of been like a smaller situation from that. But I ended up with that advisory because I was writing down the track variations. So you've got 3 track variations per track, and I was just making a list of everything in regards for like the streams that we were running at the time because I had to babysit a couple of streams because the main host was away.
Right.
So I thought, right, if I write down a list of random tracks, I can then use these so we don't have to end up running the same thing again and again. Um, about within 24, 48 hours, I got dragged into a Discord call with one of the devs, and they asked if I wanted about signing an NDA to be on the feedback team and do a bit of internal testing as well.
Nice.
The internal testing kind of dropped off in the end, but the main input that I would say is the campaign stuff with that game.
So, what would you say that you really learned about the field from your experience? Like, what was the one thing that stood out the most to you?
I'd say, well, this is coming in more from the indie side because this is a small dev.
Of course.
Um, but I'd say I've been lucky as a woman because we all know and we all see way too many horror stories on this matter.
Yeah, definitely.
Because the guys on that team, and to some extent, because I did a little bit of esports coaching as well, they didn't seem threatened by the fact that I was female. Just almost like, what would I say, relieved? Relieved that there was somebody dispassionate that was taking an interest in this game. Basically, not recoiling in horror.
Yeah, I know that the gaming industry and the dev industry in particular tends to be a boys only club, and obviously the way that women are received when I was back in industry used to be very it was very
So sorry, that was
token.
my chair.
Oh, that's all right. My lizard is walking around in the background, digging his toes into the screen, walking upside down. That's what he's been doing. So if you hear that, that's also my lizard.
Just
So
another normal day in 2020.
it is. He's just like living his best life, and we're working with it. Uh, but yeah, as I say, the way that women were dealt with was very token. And I know that from discussion with fellow devs that there was a lot of resentment because the feeling, generally speaking, in the company that I worked for was that women were only there as affirmative action, as far as a token, and they felt that they were paid too much and they were too inexperienced, and that was a very common theme, one that I did not partake of, thank you very much, being that I'm a trans man and I was perceived as female in the industry at the time. So, as a perceived female at that time, I can tell you that it was really crappy, but that was, 15 plus years ago, so obviously a lot has changed. And I think, yeah, saying as relieved, I can imagine that a lot of devs feel that having a woman's experience and a woman's eye for detail, which is a really common thing that a lot of developers will say, is that they do prefer women devs, especially for eye for detail and fine polish and their laser perception. They also have, different sized hands, and so like when you're looking at developing, like, especially consoles, now that sounds like a weird thing to say, but when you have women who have smaller hands, more delicate hands, then you're also looking at someone who's going to play your game physically different, and that's actually kind of cool, that they physically approach gaming in a different way, just based on their size, their shape, their reflexes. Also, women have faster reflexes than men. So, again, having a woman dev who has a different reflex quota can, especially having her evaluate a track or something. Oh my god, that's fantastic. Yeah, because she's going to have much faster reflexes than a guy, just statistically speaking. That doesn't, that's a broad generalism and doesn't take into account a lot of things, including ability or disability. But that's one of those things that devs do need to look at is, they're women gamers. And last I checked, it's over 60% of gamers are women. And that's, again, a broad generalization, and I've gone to different polls. And finding a poll that actually polls women and asks how many women are playing. And obviously, I would assume that those polls include trans women, which I think is fantastic. I'm hoping they do, dang it. So it's just, yeah, definitely having women in the field is absolutely necessary, especially when they make up a good chunk of your audience.
Yeah, I found this when I did the Epsilon tournament for Wipeout Omega about 2 years back. There were so many other girls that signed up to that. I'd say about 2/3 of the contenders with that were female.
Yeah, I'm not surprised at all, because women are a big part of gaming, and now seeing that it is becoming mainstream to include them. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's a long way to go. There's a long way to
Yeah.
go as far as ableism and representing disabilities, LGBTQ plus, all of those things. Still need a lot of work among devs and companies and the higher ups, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of issues where the devs are held hostage by the company that they work for, basically, and they know that they want to make changes, and they know that some things aren't right, but the company is so driven by money, and you will do this thing because it will sell more copies of the game, or this will sell the game to people who are more likely to spend the money, versus the people who are playing the games, and they're poor. They own one copy of the game, and they had to work really hard for it, and the sub is a struggle for them every month. The people that pay and that have access to jobs, to spend more money, are obviously the people that the higher ups want to market to, and devs are kind of held in flux by that, because at the end of the day they'd like a job and they have to eat and feed their families. So it
Yeah.
can be, I mean, obviously, seeing both sides of the coin here, as I discussed with Mr. Steve yesterday, um, it can be it can be a real struggle. But I'm glad that things are moving towards change. I personally am hoping to see unionization soon to protect and care for devs.
Yeah. And going back to my experience, the fact that my first experience has been via the anti-gravity and the fast racing fandom. That's brilliant because it's one of the nicest genres and fandoms out there in gaming.
Yeah, you'd be really surprised. Sometimes the ones you think that would be the most, using a stereotype here, jock oriented, and the most
Yeah.
competitive and the most vicious, you're like, wow, this must be super competitive. And probably as someone with experience with
It's
esports
just so
coaching,
casual. They
yeah.
don't mind it, male, female, LGBT, trans. They don't even mind what team you race for as long as it's not G-Tech. But that's don't get me started on that. That's a law thing.
But I think it would be safe to say that it probably did open your eyes to things that are changing, but also, if you're like me, you kind of go, this is good, this is a great start, but we need to take it further. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that would probably, would you think that'd be safe to say, that there's still some changes that need to happen?
They, industry-wise, yeah,
Yeah.
they need to. I mean, some days I just look at it, just want to pick it up and shake it.
Yeah, like,
What are you doing? It's 2020.
you kiss your
What are
mother
you
with
doing?
that mouth. But, yeah. What advice would you give someone breaking into the field of game development or advisory? Like, what would you say would be, like, the best way to kind of get into that position? I mean, obviously, in you, it was just giving some feedback and giving intelligent feedback and saying, this is what I would do, and trying to, instead of complaining, you were actually helping. What other, advice would you give?
I'd say that my approach, or the sneak approach,
The sneak approach
was
is,
possibly is possibly the better one. The thing I'd say to anybody first is you've got to know the beast. You've got to know that this industry, what it does. That it can be quite cannibalistic. It can be quite ruthless. But if you're prepared to accept that,
Then that's the place for you.
then go ahead. But because the thing is with the sneak approach is that all it relies on a dev coming to you rather than you going to find your dream dev.
Right.
So let them come to you, because you've got the problem of the industry where if you can get in, you could find that dream dev, you could be employed on your dream game doing whatever. But the way that that the industry is built is as soon as that game's out, you're getting yeeted.
Yeah, it's very short term. I mean, getting into industry, one of the things as an artist and as a storyboarder, what I was told to prepare for, and it was not inaccurate, is that, you work 3 months at a stretch. You're not going to work for any company for any great length of time. And I think the way fans perceive. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Would a good phrase to use possibly be Mad Hasser's Tea Party?
Yeah.
You're constantly moving.
Yeah, basically. That would be really accurate, that you're constantly moving, you're constantly on a new team. The way that fans perceive that games work and the way that games work from a dev perspective are two different things. And then, of course, one of the things that I've seen enforced time and again, when you work as part of a dev team, you're not there to look good or design characters or to do all those glorious things that you think you're going to do in art school. And certainly they teach you character design and they teach you the things you need to know in college. But mainly your job is always going to be to problem solve and to mediate. And even as an artist, you're going to do that. Even as an advisor, you're going to do that. That you're always going to have to be mediating. You're going to have a client come in who wants things one way. You're going to have a game director who says what the client wants isn't doable, but let's try to get as close as we can. And you have to mediate, and then you have to do what's feasible based on engine, what's feasible based on, the programs that you have available. All of that is continuous problem solving. And that's all you're going to do. You're going to move from one game to another every 3 to 6 months. And you're going to be constantly problem solving. And there are some people that do really well in that environment. Like, they really like that. And they like change. And they get bored if they stay still too long. And those are the people that, become constants in the gaming industry and are highly sought after. But this idea that you're going to become famous and win all this recognition, I don't know how you feel about rocks, but you might be texturizing a rock. That might be all you do throughout your experience as a game dev. You will design one rock. And that is what you will spend days, weeks, months of your life on one rock. And it must be perfect.
So if you're not prepared to be doing that, the reshuffling,
yeah, then it's not for you.
Solving, it's not for you.
Yeah.
The alternative would be that I'd recommend potentially looking at would be the educational route in.
Yeah.
So either the sneak route
or the educational route, and a lot of people do that.
which is what my Steve does. Which educational side, it's not quite as crazy as your mainstream entertainment side of the industry, but it's better.
Yeah.
In regards to it's a bit more relaxed.
And I mean, you're looking at
a bit slower.
Yeah, and you're looking at, there's the same political tensions. I mean, that's the hardest part about the educational aspect of being a dev. But as far as having days off, having healthcare, having a sane schedule, because games are not yet unionized for the most part, I think there are a couple of new companies actually coming out of ex-execs from Blizzard Entertainment. That there are companies that are unionizing, and I think that that's really great, because looking back at my personal experience with it, we're talking sweatshop labor. we're talking no names on credits and carrying massive workloads and, no time to eat. We used to have a person come in who would tell us every day before we started work to remember that we were replaceable. I can have another artist in here at any time I want, another butt in that chair, so you better do your best and just remember that, you're just a cog in this machine and you don't have a purpose other than for us to use you and throw you away. He was straightforward about it. He was a complete dick. I hated him so much.
I would say another div in the wall, but that's a bit inappropriate.
You're not really wrong though. I mean that was that approach, and you don't see that in a good workplace as a div. In a good workplace, because there are bad places to work, and it's hard being a developer working at a college because, again, there's all those political toes that get stepped on, and there's always these games you have to juggle, and, are you taking students away from another department, and people will fight you, and are you poaching, and it can be really, really stressful. But once you learn that dance and you find yourself in a good place, especially where learning is integrated, where all the departments work together instead of, is visual arts poaching from the creative writing department by grabbing script writers, etc., etc. And again, that's
upset IT today because they're doing coding.
Exactly, who has angered the IT gods? Yeah, so definitely there are lots of positions available in advisory, and honestly, if I could go back and do it again, I would say being a div destroyed my love for gaming and arts, and it really broke my creativity in a lot of ways. So if I could go back to my younger self and say anything, I would say don't go into development from the actual development side. Go educational, because that would have utilized my skills better, because obviously I'm a teacher. But we're talking about you here, and I'm just not trying to make it about me. I'm just trying to relate to what you're saying. So I guess
if you show a passion for the game,
yeah,
a div will come to you.
Yeah, absolutely, 110%.
I speak from experience.
Yeah, they know the right people for their team. They've had enough time to see what they don't want, and they know what they want. And I mean, obviously, do the kind, do the fair, do the intelligent thing, put intelligent responses to games out there and say, look, these are the things I would change. If I could change this, this is what I would do, and then leave it be. Don't drop it in a div's inbox. It's just, your right to say what you think of the game, or even when you're leaving game reviews, just say, XYZ, these things need improvement in my opinion. Or this is what I would do, and make it a very public thing. And very often the divs will approach you if you have something worthwhile to offer. Because lots of people, I mean, anybody can just leave a crappy review on a game, but if you actually say, this is what I'd change, and give a rational, usable approach like you did, that's what divs are really looking for. Because obviously, as a div, you can't please everybody, but you always do want to do your best. You have a responsibility as a creator. And I say that again and again and again, that with great power comes great responsibility. And you have to remember that you are responsible for these things, even as an advisor. And that's why game companies look for advisors from all walks of life, including women, thank God. And they're listening to what women have to say about their gaming experiences. So yeah, they did a great job putting you on the team, because that's what they need, is someone who's going to problem solve with them. So if you could say one thing that would encourage other women in industry and women as advisors, what would it be?
Just do you. There's always going to be blokes, both dev and fandom side, that are so offended by your presence.
How dare!
But
you're better than
you
game.
You need to keep your presence there, because it's this. As I keep saying, we're in 2020. Why are we still gating this?
Yeah, you know what? You're probably better at games than most of the guys that are offended.
And also,
I'll just put
you're
that one out
going.
there. You are that good, so don't underscore, oh, I'm a woman, I'm not wanted here. Make yourself wanted there. You belong because games are for you too.
You need to kind of take on the same no nonsense attitude that I've picked up from my mum, which is basically. Sorry, that was my phone.
Yeah, just
The
okay.
same attitude from my mum, which is basically take excuse my language, take no shit.
Yeah, 110%.
Take no shit, give no Fs.
Do you
I mean,
be
I believe it or not, and Steve said to this, I actually scare blokes, or at least the other guys at my gaming society. They were scared of me.
because you wouldn't take any shit, my friend. That's why.
Oh yeah, but you need that kind of attitude. You don't have to make it turn you into a tyrant, and that's a no. You just need to just do it because you're passionate about it. Don't take any nonsense from them.
Well, I mean, really and
But
truly.
also,
Oh, go
you
ahead.
are going to get like the odd little jab.
Oh,
I
yeah.
mean, I would be lying if I said I hadn't had the odd little jab made at me. Um, but then, in regards, I mean, it was quite funny the one I have had from just. I mean, I say about the fast racing fandom being so welcoming, but you do get the occasional one. I have had a couple of women driver comments made at me, but the way I've the way that I've interpreted it, they're just being observant. Have you seen how I race? I am dragging my face along the side of that track. I have become one with the wall.
But if you're winning, who cares?
Oh yeah, but I got all the quakes as well. But in regards to that, the odd little a point I'm trying to say, and I'm going to try and word this as well as my dyslexic brain can. You don't be afraid to take like the odd little jab like that. It's when it starts getting aggressive, if you know what I'm trying to say here.
Yeah, I do.
So,
And
like, a little thing like a woman driver comment, fair enough. But if it's like attacking your sex, even. I hope that didn't come through on the mic.
oh no, you good.
Sorry, Steve's just exploding downstairs. But so a little jab like that, you could class as banter. I hate that word, but anything more than that, you need to start maybe considering reporting or getting out. I think what I'm trying to say is don't report every little tidbit that a bloke says to you.
Yeah.
Because it's just going to make things difficult for us in the long run.
Well, yeah.
If everything is reported, you need to report the big stuff.
Yeah, you never want to come across as a crybaby, but I will say this.
I hope I worded that in a way that...
No, that makes sense because you got to have a sense of humor about it to some extent. Because if you can kind of play it off as humor, it's more likely to just kind of help you fit in with the crew because, we all have kind of a dark sense of humor. But there comes a point where men are being assholes. They're being horrible to women. And that's where male divs and male advisors need to step in and say that's not acceptable. There comes a point where, like, oh, woman driver, haha, and you laugh it off. I mean, obviously, if it continues and there's a real intent behind it, and women, you have that sixth sense. You know when somebody's acting like they're trying to be funny, but they're really just being a dick. And if you are concerned, if you're uncomfortable, you do need to report it. And as a guy, what I'm going to say to my fellow divs is when you see a woman who looks uncomfortable, and there's another one of you among you who is being a jackass, that is the time you step in. because that's a responsibility on your part, and you don't get to bury your head and go, oh well, I don't want them to not like me, I don't want to start a fight. No, when you see a dude getting out of line, be a king. You have to step in and say, that's not how I do that, that's not right. And if that person continues that behavior, then they're out. They're just out, because that's not acceptable, and that's not a welcoming gaming experience, and everybody deserves to be welcome. And that would be the same as, giving somebody crap for being gay or trans. Well, that's not a real man, they're not a real man, like, what are they doing in this program, blah blah blah, look at that, insert expletive here about, being trans or being gay. And that's not being funny. I mean, there comes a point where, I don't know, I think I have as good a sense of humor as anybody else. I'm not
Yeah.
super sensitive about it, I'm not whiny, but there comes a point where somebody's being a jerk and they're being aggressive, and that's not okay, and that's got to be dealt with. And so, I think from a gaming perspective, you hear a lot of people always say, well, the company, the devs can't be responsible for blah, blah, blah. No, there is a point. I mean, you are making a
This
product.
is my biggest problem with I have an industry. It's just such a warren of you. This
I can't
you
take
can
responsibility
blatantly
for this.
You can
Yeah.
blatantly see something that you know that your moral compass knows is wrong, but there's so many loopholes that you can't.
You can't do
Like,
anything.
You can't just point and say, "You shut
Out.
it."
But there comes a point where all companies are starting to realize this now. Some very late, some are very late to that party. That there comes a point where, yeah, you're responsible for what you put out, and you are to some extent responsible for your fans. I mean, the ones that are so mentally ill that they can't tell the difference between fantasy and reality shouldn't be playing your games. And if you have somebody who's so mentally ill that they're attacking people, doxing people, doing cruel stuff to people, there comes a point where you got to step up and say, we take responsibility, at least enough to reprimand or deal with the player, or at least say, look, cool it, or else,
Yeah.
there's going to be consequences. You do, as a dev, have to do that. You do. And that's just not just on a not on a law-based level, on a, you are responsible for what you put out as a moral compass. Even people who put out games that are based on, murder and violence. I'm thinking of a couple of games, but I'm not going to name names. Like, I know, like, be interested to know that even games like GTA, that obviously have quite a reputation and were questionable for a long time, with people saying, at what point does, a developer and a company have to take responsibility for the things that are done in their game? You can't be responsible for somebody who doesn't understand the difference between fantasy and reality, and you can't take fun away from people, just because some people can't play nice. So there comes a point where you have to regulate, as a developer, the behaviors of people consuming your games, because you have to say, look, there are some responsibility here. I can't just turn my back on this. It's not okay to kill sex workers. It's not okay to do those things. If it's part of a game and it's a fantasy and it's an offlet and that's all it is, it's not going to hurt people. But if I see my fans doing things they shouldn't do, or saying they were inspired by my game to do bad things, and this has not happened just once but a couple of times, I have to look at how I'm regulating that and say, look, if that's how, if this game makes you want to hurt women, then we need to ban your account, because, you're not able to tell the difference between fantasy and reality. You need to not be playing our game. And you're going to take that hit, and you're going to lose those people, and you're going to lose that money,
And they may say horrible things.
And they may say really horrible things and drag you on every forum and, go on a campaign to smear you. But at some point, as a dev, you got to stand up and say, look, this isn't right. And, obviously it's hard because, you've got a boss who says, don't make any waves, sit there, keep your mouth shut. We want to make as much money as possible. But then a developer has to decide, morally, sometimes it's time to stand up. And if you see people getting hurt, that's when you've got to step in. Whether your company likes it or not, whether you have a job tomorrow or not. And that is something that I will say to other devs. If you are at a company where you're told to keep your mouth shut, where really bad things are happening, and you're not protected by a union that you can go to, my suggestion would be that if you do the right thing and you lose your job for it, you're not working for the right company. And that's okay. Take it and walk away. There are other companies that will accept you with open arms, and will say, good on you for being responsible and doing the right thing. So you got to kind of say, I get that you're hungry. I get that you've got a family to feed and you have those responsibilities, but it does not absolve you from your responsibility as being a decent human being. And, people who are advisors, people who are game testers, same thing. You've got to be a decent human being too. So if you're making shitty women driver comments to somebody in a racing game, then obviously the very first thing is the fellow testers and developers need to step in and say, look, that's not how we do shit around here, and give it a chance to resolve. But if somebody's being violent, out with you. Don't let it hit you in the butt on the way out. And that's a responsibility there too. So again, getting into the D field, getting into the advisory field, there's a lot of things to consider, and these things happen every day. This is not like a one-off. You can talk to anyone in the gaming community and they will tell you that AAA down to small indie teams, these are things that happen all the time.
Yeah.
So now that we've gone off on that particular tangent, like, Kale, you did all the talking. Shut the hell up and let the woman speak. What is next for your creative life? Like, do you have any plans to go back to school? Do you want to write a novel? What have you got?
I did look at arty courses. So, I want to do something really out on the limb here. In the event of a non-COVID world.
Yeah, when that happens next.
I want to maybe get onto some of the city I'm in has a heritage centre and they've got heritage skill courses.
Oh, hell yeah.
I'm eyeing up some of those in regards to prop purposes because they do things like blacksmithing.
I was just going to say blacksmithing has got to be on the list.
To hear my brain just go,
hey. The little hands going, hey. And then, of course, didn't you say something about illuminated manuscript? Because I know you're really into word art.
Yeah, they do one of those courses as well.
Nice.
And that's another one of the books I've got along with my graffiti book. I've got a book on graffiti and I've got a book on Celtic writing. And have I got it? And I have a lot of reference books.
Nice.
Which is another thing which... can we sneak back into the persons looking to break into the field of game development? If you're an artist, don't abuse your references. References are good.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Oh, no, it's okay. I've been on that soapbox a few times this year, but yeah. As I say, let me tell you about references. I will.
Oh my.
Grandpa Kale is pulling up the soapbox. When you work in industry and you walk in, the very first thing that's going to happen is people are going to say, here's the references folder. These are all the references that you can use. Use them and abuse them. Use them to make brushes. Do you know how to photo bash? No, I'll teach you how to photo bash. Do you know how to do paint overs? Do you know how to grid? Do you know how to rotoscope? And these are all things that are tools that are used every stinking day. I think, and I want to blame DeviantArt for a generation of kids who are coming up into young adultdom now that grew up thinking that drawing from your head with no references makes you a real artist. And while that's fantastic, and there are about 4 or 5 people on the planet who can extremely accurately draw something from their memory, if you want your duck to look like a duck, you need to use references. Even if you want your alien bird duck to look like an alien bird duck, you need references. You need anatomy, you need physiology, you need to understand how stuff works. You need to use references. And don't be afraid to try all of those things. There's still art. Paint overs, photo bashing, rotoscoping, those are all things used constantly in industry. A lot of the animation that you see is motion capture on a 3D model that somebody has made from photos. And we had a human being model for those photos. That's how real life works. And obviously, you can't steal other people's work and then say this is my reference unless in industry you're told to, here are the references from somebody else, we expect it to look just like this. But obviously in the art world, art theft is bad, but using references is good, and there are so many sites where you can buy really inexpensive freelance references. There are plenty of places where references are free and they're readily available. Use them, abuse them. They're there for you to do that for. Obviously, in the art world, if you're referencing another artist, then you get into, how do you reference their work, etc., etc. And that's a different story. But using references, A plus. Get used to the idea, because if you want to get into industry, even as an advisor, you need to have to know that that's how it actually works. This deviant art, privileged, snotty 12-year-old going, I have more creativity in my pinky finger because I only draw from what I remember, versus somebody in industry saying, I've been in industry for years, these are the references that I use, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm putting out. There's just a massive difference. And if you have that childish attitude towards, I'm a real artist because I don't use references, you are not going to succeed. I will just straight up, fingers up your nostrils, pull you forehead to forehead. You will not succeed with that attitude. So, get out there, have fun, create all the things, try something new, do some paint overs, do some grid work, do some photo bashing. Those references are there for you, and it's going to make you one hell of an artist.
And don't be afraid to use different media as well.
Exactly.
That's what they're looking for on. Because I said about FDAs back previously with my ridiculous qualifications and degrees. You get foundation degrees in foundations in arts. They will have you use every media under the sun on that course, whether you like it or not.
Yeah, so you can't
Even
just
if
do.
you just want to do illustration at the end of it, they will drag you by the hair through every single medium.
And that's 100% necessary, because all of those skills that you learn from, say, a sculpting course have been absolutely invaluable to me in line art as an artist, the way I line. Because you'll notice if you look at my work, I don't have a lot of line variation. I'm a person that, because of my visual problems, I put my hands on something and then I can draw it, because I can remember the muscle memory of the feeling of those shapes. And then in my lines, you'll see that a lot, that I tend to draw more outlines than I do detailed line art, which is why I'm not suited for anime style, even though that was a big part of my foundation, which is why I'm more into realism. That's just the way I paint. But my sculpture courses, my actual traditional printmaking, oh my god, I had a great course at Siena Heights with Mads. Hi, Mads. And she 100% influenced the way I paint now, and that was only a couple of years ago. That continuing education in all media, it's vital. And I'm not saying you have to go to college to do it. You can do it yourself.
Oh,
Now everything, there's so many tutorials, there are so many books, there's so many do-it-yourself stuff out there. So much
and
do it
also,
yourself.
potentially, if you've got a family member as well. My mum did she did pottery in the end on a non-commercial. This is back in the 80s. So still got a lot of it. If you want to do pottery, you're going to be doing like churning. You're going to be learning to churn out the same pots. You can go and work in the factory.
Right.
If you wanted to do pottery as art, ceramics as art, you went up to Edinburgh.
Right.
So she did her course there. But when I was initially looking at a way to boost my portfolio going into university, I was looking at different mediums of arts, and every day she had me using a different media. So one day it would be acrylics, Next day, photography. And then biro. Biro is very popular in my family.
You see, so there's the brain
Biro
picking
plus
activity right
dried
there.
vegetables in my family equals art.
It's fair, okay? It's art. But yeah, I mean, everything that you learn is intersectional. So, like, the things that you learn in photography, you're going to use in color theory, you're going to use in design theory, you're going to use in 3D theory. All of those things are necessary. And so, like, if you say, do I think that one art is more worthy than another? No. Having a background in all of those things are useful in the gaming industry. All of those things are useful in the movie industry. You need to know them. And you can teach them to yourself. They're not something that you have to go to college for.
Oh yeah.
But, again, breaking into industry, advising what it's actually like. If you can look all those things in the eye and say, despite warts and all, this is what I want to do, then industry is for you. And obviously, I think we're looking at a lack of sustainability right now in the gaming industry, and things are going to change a lot in the next 2 years.
It's gotta change, or it's just going to go.
It's going to die.
It's getting to that. I don't want to be the harbinger of doom and gloom, but I'd say it's starting to get to that.
Oh yeah, it's noticeable. As a person who has learned to enjoy games again after all these years, I would say that it's pretty obvious that the industry, as it stands, in my unprofessional opinion, it is unsustainable, and you're going to see some changes in the next 2 years. Probably a lot of them really positive. It's just there are going to be a lot of people gloom and dooming it because change is scary. And, they may not be making quite as much money off of the back of the people that do the hard work, and the people who do the hard work might be making more money. And games
That's what put me off about esports, just how that's run.
Yeah.
Because I was given the opportunity a while back to there was going to be an event for 2 days in London. This fell through in the end, unfortunately. But literally, hey, go down. We'll pay for it. Go down to London for 2 days, play X game, and we'll see if people will place money bets on it. That's why I refuse to vote for, like, in the Game Awards. I refuse to vote for anything to do with esports because I manage teams. I managed 2 teams for Heroes, and I really enjoyed that. But I don't agree with the money side of it.
Yeah.
But literally, we want you to play this until your fingers bleed, just on the off chance somebody will place a fiver on it. Sorry, I'm ranting now.
No, I mean that's something it's one of those things that you also see a lack of understanding in the fan base, especially, and the gamer base, of how that actually works. And the moral of the story is I hear people going, oh, this game is bad and the company that runs it is bad, but I feel bad for the artists, and, you're a horrible monster if you stop paying for this game because then the artists aren't getting paid. Back up. Let me tell you how that actually works. This is another thing you need to know as a div, or part of a crew, or as an artist, or anyone in the underling to the main company that supports you. You're going to get paid up front. A majority of your work is done completely up front. Very few people in the company make any kind of royalty. So if you have a game that is showing its ass, so to speak, and doing bad things, and you have the company doing very bad things, and you like playing the game, it's a shame, but you want to stop playing it because you don't want to support those morals, and that's totally acceptable. If you want to keep playing, that's fine. But I hear a lot of people say, oh well, I don't want to, those poor game designers are starving, and they've already been paid. They've seen all the money they're gonna see. They got paid up front. They're not touching royalties. They're not getting anything from your subs. They're getting zero, zip, nada. So they got paid what they're going to get paid. They got paid probably crappily. The only thing you're doing is lining the naughty game company's pocket every time you pay for a sub to a company that does things that you don't agree with. So, if you truly don't agree with what a company does and you don't want to support it, you stop playing the game and you stop paying a sub fee. Because, I mean, at this point, you're not supporting anybody. You're not supporting. All you're doing is keeping a company
You're supporting
afloat.
a wallet, but
Yeah,
it's not the
but
wallet
it's
you want to be
yeah,
supporting.
it's not the wallet. You're better off finding that person that you want to support or persons and asking if you can commission them or if you can donate or join a Patreon, because a lot of them do, because we all know that in the industry it's not sustainable. You're not going to work in any one place for any length of time, and you are, as my one boss put it, disposable. So, you're kind of smart. You don't put all your eggs in one basket. You do some freelancing on the side unless you're absolutely, forbidden in a non-competition way, from doing that. And so, yeah, I just wanted to, that is actually a really good point to bring up, is that, just stop paying people that do bad things. Vote with your wallet. Because that's the only thing that they're going to listen to from a div perspective. And you know what? If the company I work for stops making a game and I lose my job, there are plenty of other companies out there that want to give me a job. And it's going to suck for a couple of weeks. And that's when, if you really want to support your divs and your artists, you find their Patreons, you find their Ko-Fis, you find, their commissions, and you help them out until they've got a new job somewhere else. They know they're going to transition. I mean, that's just a given. Some companies, they don't even keep you around for 2 months. Or, the personal least favorite is your company gets bought out by another company in the middle of a game and your whole game gets scrapped. I can't tell you how many times that's happened. And yeah, you accept it. You always have money away for a couple of months because, you're going to move somewhere else. You're going to need to put a new deposit on a new apartment. You're going to have to move all your stuff. You're going to have to drive, relocate. That's part of it. So you either accept that or you don't. And, but as a gamer, if you want to support your divs, find them individually and donate to them and stop playing the games that do bad things to their developers too. Don't line the company who owns the developers' pockets, because otherwise you're just contributing to the problem. And again, only my opinion. I take full responsibility for the outrage that I will probably receive by people whose perceptions I have shattered. But leave Lara alone. Come after me. But yeah, that's about the long and the short of it. So if you could, 5 years from now, ideally, in a world without COVID and in a world where you could do whatever you wanted, what would your dream be? What would your dream job be? Would you want to be an advisor at a company? Would you want to be a div? Would you want to be a scriptwriter? What would you do if you could?
Right, this is going to sound crazy.
Oh, no. We love crazy around here.
I have kind of jokingly discussed with Steve if we, say, lived closer towards Alton Towers, possibly doing something for them.
That'd be awesome.
Design-wise.
Oh, that'd be great.
Acting-wise. I don't know.
I think that's a great goal. You never know. Keep your eyes open, keep your ear to the ground. It could be coming your way.
You're talking to someone who grew up where Flamingo Land's just down the road, and they don't really theme. Alton got first chance to go to it last year, and I loved it just because so much effort has been put into the theming and the art direction. I'm not a rides person, but I'm just busy admiring. Oh, look at all this fake goo over here.
You love the you love the artistry of the industry, and that's actually really great. I mean, that's a true fan at the heart of it.
especially when it's like especially when it's like your 3D media. So like I
Yeah,
if you were going to go into like 3D media and like favorite films or favorite series,
prop making could be in the future for you,
you
my
got
dear.
Dark Crystal, the original Thing, not the new one because they put too much CGI in it, and I refuse to watch it on principle.
Fair enough.
There, I'm turning into my mother now. It's like this filthy technology. This has computers in it. I don't like it. I am uncomfortable.
I love Brian and Wendy Froud. They are such an inspiration. I obviously grew up in my infancy with Dark Crystal, so I cut my teeth on fantasy with Dark Crystal, and my love for art probably did really start there because how
But
I
I
did
love
not.
stuff and props like that because it's got an organic feel to it that you get
There's
lost
there's a soul
when you
to it.
start. Oh
Yeah.
yeah,
And, for someone who I've obviously started out my life in 2D and in, tangible 3D, not, 3D online computer design, there is something to be said for the organic and the soul that seems to be in traditional art that is not in digital. I can do some cheating when I digitally paint or I work on a digital process where I feel like I can really capture that spark. But in a lot of 3D things with 3D models, I do find that we're still really kind of lacking. And the animation does not. The animation still has a plastic quality to it that just doesn't feel human. And
yeah.
or even alien. It just doesn't feel alive to me. And that's one of the things that I don't like about what I did and my stint in industry. But yeah, definitely. I think it's great that you're thinking about joining up. Maybe you never know. Alton Towers could be into it. You could always put in a resume and see what they say.
But I know, but we're just both more in. Well, Steve's a bigger coaster fan than I am, but we just really like the designs.
Yeah, and you know what?
Particularly Smiler. I mean, I know people always kind of like to hold that at arm's length because of what happened,
Uh-huh.
but the design on it is just the theming is just 100%.
Very awesome. So
But the one
hopefully,
thing I do want to
okay.
kind of like make sure whatever I do is I don't want to. Again, excuse my language. I don't want to turn into an asshole.
I think that's 100% fair.
I've
Staying.
always promised myself, and this was why sometimes when I've been streaming with friends, I've just refused to stream. If I can feel what I'm doing kind of like twisting my personality into something I know I'm not, I will literally just hang up the control and say, sorry, I'm not doing this anymore. It's turning me into somebody that I'm not, and I'm not comfortable with it.
I think that's important. I mean, because that is again, the heart of it, isn't it? Don't it's
Yeah.
be humble, be yourself, and but also take no shit. You know what I mean? So there's this fine
Oh, yeah.
line that you have to walk, and then women, in games and
It's kind of a thing
minorities in
that
games have
has.
it even harder because it's a difficult line.
It's kind of a thing that has put me off solo streaming for a while because there is still a problem with streaming if you're a
Mm-hmm.
woman.
Oh yeah,
But I just know that with my attitude, if somebody starts something, I will go off on one. And then Twitch will tell me off.
well there goes my partnership. Oh well.
Rip.
Alrighty. Well, I really appreciate you being here today and talking candidly with us about the reality. Reality and expectations don't always strive. You've had some really
The
good
sneak
advice.
approach,
Yeah,
right?
sneak approach. That's right. Be yourself. Be yourself, and that's attractive. I mean, that's the truth right there. Be yourself. And if yourself is a trans man, don't be afraid to be yourself. That's one of the reasons that I put it out there that I am trans, because most trans guys just want to pass, but that's part of who I am. That I'm a trans man, and everybody's at different places in their life, and you don't have to do that or be comfortable with it. But be yourself as a woman. I'm competitive. I'm a player. I'm here. I'm showing up. I play to the best of my ability, and I leave. And being yourself and standing up for what you believe in, that's part of it. And I mean, it's expected. So be yourself. Don't, go in guns blazing and say you should hire me. Just if you put good stuff out there and you're yourself, then the good stuff is going to come to you. Sometimes it takes time, but it will come to you.
Yeah.
Thank you again, Lara. We appreciate your time today and your valuable insights. We also appreciate our listeners, and we hope you stay tuned for more exciting podcasts here at Mythrights. Remember, creativity counts and representation matters.